For sale, weird rock I found during our neighborhood Easter egg hunt. Item, brown rock, about 6 inches in diameter, with a glowing green orb in the center. Price, negotiable. Info, there's a little bit of a backstory behind this one, so bear with me. I live in a small town in the Pacific Northwest. It's a cozy place, real family-centric, and we do a lot of community events throughout the year to raise money for the food pantry or the local school system or the dog shelter, stuff like that. Every year, the police department organizes a little Easter egg hunt down behind the high school, and all the kids come out to participate. I've got a nephew of my own who loves the event, so I always volunteer to help hide the eggs. The hunt stretches out over the entire football field and cross-country track, which means there's a lot of tiny nooks and crannies we can use. I was rooting around under the bleachers looking for a good hiding spot when I dug up this weird rock. Descriptions above for reference. At first I thought it was some kind of toy because that glowing orb in the middle kept pulsing in and out like an LED bulb. But the rock itself was kind of rough and jagged, and I couldn't imagine a child playing with it. I went to stick it in my pocket to look at it later when I fumbled with my other hand and dropped a couple eggs on the ground. They cracked right open and splattered hard-boiled chunks everywhere. I swore and knelt down to pick up the eggshell pieces so none of the kids would step on them. But then the rock in my hand stopped pulsing and took on this steady green glow. It was so bright it left little specks in my eyes. I kind of stared at it dumbly, not sure what to make of the sudden light show. Then the eggs reformed themselves. The eggshells slid back together and the yolky chunks were slurped up inside, like someone sucking them back with the straw, completely defying the laws of entropy. The whole thing took maybe a few seconds. Then there was a pile of unbroken painted eggs sitting pretty on the ground as if nothing had happened in the first place. It didn't take a genius to put two and two together. I looked at the rock for a moment, then stepped pointedly on a large twig, snapping it in half. The rock did its whole glowing thing again, and the twig came back together. I couldn't even see the point where it had broken. I wasn't stupid. This was a money-making opportunity waiting to happen. And instead of standing around insisting that this couldn't be possible, I pocketed that rock and took it home. Then I brought it to the hardware store where I work and did some testing. First I tried bending a metal rod out of shape. Flash of light. It was straight again. I took apart a power drill and laid the pieces on the counter. Flash of light. It was whole again. I even nicked myself with my pocket knife and made a little cut on my arm. The skin healed itself in seconds, without leaving a single scar. I had a little business fixing stuff as part of the hardware job, although the business itself had been slow lately. People were too impatient to leave their stuff here overnight while I did my damnedest to fix what I could. Now that I had the rock, though, everything changed. I was able to repair my clients' broken things almost instantly. People took notice, and eventually word got out about my little magic trick, quote-unquote. Soon customers were lining up with all sorts of damaged goods, willing to shell out their hard-earned dough to experience the magic themselves. It wasn't just the hardware stuff either. The stone didn't care if you brought a broken iPhone or a broken family heirloom. Then someone came in with a broken arm and the stone glowed the brightest it had ever glowed before, fixing the injury in no time. People were stunned. I heard mutterings about Jesus working miracles, which honestly wasn't a bad comparison. There was something otherworldly about that rock. Something a bit divine. It's a good thing our town's so small, because if the government caught wind of this magic stone, they definitely have shut down the whole gig and taken the rock for themselves. I was living large. The fix-it business was booming again, and I owed it to all my miraculous little find. Who cared if I was profiting from it? I was doing good for the town, helping people mend the broken things in their lives. It wasn't any different from paying a plumber or a mechanic for a job well done. I was just another public servant. When you broke it down, doing my job, one crisis at a time. Thought he meant like when you broke it down as you broke the thing down. The other day I was closing the store tidying up the shells and such, when a man walked in. He was a real hulk of a guy, maybe 3 feet across. Wore a tan rain jacket that came down to his knees. He asked if I was Leighton Brown. I said I was. Regretted it immediately when he pulled a gun out of his jacket and hissed at me to shut up and follow him. I asked him what he wanted. Said his name was Pete Randall, and he'd just lost his wife in a car accident the other week. He'd heard about my little miracle stone, and he was convinced I could bring it to his wife back from the dead. Use it to bring his wife back from the dead. The guy had clearly lost it. There was a manic, bloodshot look in his eyes. Look of a man who's gone past the brink of insanity. I kept my hands up and stared nervously at the barrel of the gun. I'd never tried resurrecting anything with the rock before. I wasn't some kind of psycho, killing things to see if I could just play God with their corpses. I didn't even know if it would work. But I couldn't exactly tell that to the man with a gun in my face. Nervous. He was sweating heavily around the collar, and he kept shooting glances to the side even though the store was empty. I got the impression that he'd never held anybody up before. Wasn't sure if that made him more or less dangerous. At one point he looked back at the exit for a little too long, and I took the opportunity to snatch a shovel from the wall and bash him across the frickin' head. He staggered back and dropped the gun. There was a huge gash in his forehead, and I realized I had struck him with the blade of the shovel instead of the flat end. He slumped on the ground and went still. I panicked and ran to his side, feeling for a pulse, but there was nothing. Then I felt the rock throbbing in my pocket, and I pulled it out. The orb in the middle was growing brighter than I'd ever seen. An almost gleeful shade of green, like the northern lights, were swirling in the palm of my hand, and the gash on Randall's head stitched itself back together. The blood slurped back into his skull, the wound closed, and the dead man opened his eyes. His eyeballs were gone. There was just a solid, glowing green behind his eyelids. He lurched upward and swiped at me before I could get my bearings. I just barely managed to duck aside as his meaty hand slammed into the closet shelf and sent trowels and rakes clattering to the floor. I staggered back, reaching for the bloody shovel. Randall's face had lost all of its earlier worried tics. There was nothing left in him but a fierce emerald glare. He leaped at me, and I brought the shovel up. The blade impaled him in the chest and sent a spray of blood across my face. But instead of slowing him down, he grabbed the handle and ripped it off free from his guts, chucking the shovel off into the corner. The wound on his chest glowed a faint green as it congealed and came back together. Even the ragged hole in his jacket stitched back up. I wasn't sure if it was the stone doing this, if he had somehow absorbed the stone's power for himself. Either way, I was pretty effed. I managed to flee the aisle and burst through the emergency exit, which set off a chorus of alarms. My car was in the lot next door, but I managed to grab my keys and climb inside before Randall caught up with me. My heart was pounding, and I was running on pure adrenaline. By the time I started the engine and tore out of the parking lot, I could see Randall's shadow standing in the doorway of the hardware store, his eyes glowing that impossible shade of green. I thought I was safe in an anonymous little hotel a few miles out of town, but Randall's managed to find me here and in every other hiding place I've tried since I've left. I've had several close scrapes, even got a nasty gash on my arm, which probably healed right up. But every time I think I've shaken him, he pops up again, murderous and invincible. I guess I'm invincible too, but I'm not too keen on letting him tear me apart to prove that theory. I bet he's following the rock like some kind of homing signal. I've tried chucking it, but it keeps finding its way back to me like a goddamn magnet. That's why I'm hoping you can take it off my hand. Randall won't bother you since you didn't really kill him after all. Plus, you have a talisman that can fix any broken object or heal any wound. It's a steal, really. The deal of a lifetime. You'd have to be an idiot not to take advantage of this offer. Are there risks? Sure. Just don't make the same mistakes I did. Don't market the thing like some kind of cheap parlor trick. Keep it close to you and use it for good, not for profit. Be smart and you can carry a miracle in your pocket. Nothing bad can happen to you while you carry it. Unless you spend most of your time around dead things, in which case, well, this might not be a product for you. I won't beg because that's not professional. But I'm really hoping you can help a guy out here.